Gemini Rising, in Navamsha, manifestations. Gemini to Libra. Manifestation. The person will develop multiple skills through their passionate engagement with various fields. Socially adept, they are likely to be involved in networking and communication, often marrying a spouse for financial gain. They will rely heavily on their communication and intellectual abilities to navigate both personal and professional life, but must guard against superficiality or overdependence on relationships for financial security. Gemini to Scorpio. Manifestation. The individual's mind is drawn to research, mystery, and solving complex puzzles. They are intensely curious, always seeking hidden meanings and deeper truths. This placement may bring psychological intensity, along with potential conflicts with siblings or neighbors. The person may fear losing control of their mental faculties or overthinking, leading to a tendency toward anxiety and mental unrest. Gemini to Sagittarius. Manifestation. This combination brings a natural inclination toward teaching and advising, particularly in working with children. The individual may become a primary school teacher or child counselor, using their communication skills to guide and nurture young minds. Their intellectual energy is focused on education and learning, but they must avoid becoming overly didactic or rigid in their teaching approach. Gemini to Capricorn. Manifestation. The individual takes on a servant-like role in their interactions with children, often finding themselves in advisory or teaching positions. They are driven to pass on their knowledge to the younger generation, emphasizing discipline and structure in their communication. This placement brings a strong focus on responsibility and duty, but the individual may struggle with feelings of being overburdened or undervalued. Gemini to Aquarius. Manifestation. The individual is likely to be involved in unconventional forms of communication, such as writing short notes or engaging in abstract intellectual pursuits. They may find themselves working with unusual or unconventional children, neighbors, or social groups, often drawn to innovative or eccentric ideas. There is a tendency to break from traditional thinking, which can lead to both creative breakthroughs and misunderstandings. Gemini to Pisces. Manifestation. The person is generous towards siblings and neighbors, often going on short trips or engaging in frequent travel. Professionally, they may work in roles that involve constant communication and movement. Their intellectual curiosity is paired with a sense of giving, leading them to help others in practical ways, but they may struggle with maintaining focus or clarity in their pursuits. Gemini to Aries. Manifestation. The person's interactions with siblings and neighbors become a focal point, with a significant influence from these relationships shaping their professional or personal life. Depending on planetary placements, e.g. Matrikaraka, they may find maternal figures or aunts playing a pivotal role. This placement emphasizes the active role they take in their local environment, often leading projects or initiatives involving those close to them. Gemini to Taurus. Manifestation. Communication and speech become key resources in their life. The individual looks to their siblings or neighbors as sources of financial gain or resources, often using their intellectual abilities to capitalize on these relationships. There is a strong focus on material security through intellectual pursuits, though they must guard against selfishness or using relationships purely for personal gain. Gemini to Gemini. Manifestation. The person is highly talkative and communicative, relying on their own intellectual abilities to succeed in life and relationships. If Mercury is well placed, they excel in writing, speaking, and artistic endeavors. They are often driven by a need for constant intellectual stimulation and may use their skills in communication to achieve personal and professional success, but they must guard against becoming overly scattered or unfocused. Manifestation. Gemini natal to Navamsha, Libra to Sagittarius. Gemini to Libra. Sun. Leadership and recognition are expressed through social and intellectual skills. The individual thrives in social settings, using charm and communication to gain recognition. Partnerships may play a significant role in boosting their status, but they must avoid being too dependent on others for validation. Moon. Emotional security comes from social interactions and intellectual exchanges. The individual feels emotionally balanced when surrounded by harmonious relationships, but may become too dependent on their social circles for emotional stability. Mars, energy and drive are channeled into building social networks and forming partnerships. The individual is assertive in social situations and strives to excel through collaboration, but may face conflicts or competition in their relationships if they become overly aggressive. Mercury, communication is a key asset in forming partnerships and social connections. The individual excels in intellectual and diplomatic exchanges, often using their words to build bridges and form alliances, but they should avoid superficiality in communication. Jupiter, growth and expansion are achieved through social relationships and intellectual partnerships. The individual seeks opportunities to broaden their horizons through collaboration, but should avoid being overly idealistic or dependent on others for success. Venus, relationships and harmony are central to the individual's life. They seek balance, beauty, and intellectual stimulation in relationships, often valuing partners who enhance their self-worth, but must avoid entering relationships purely for material gain or social status. Saturn, discipline and responsibility in relationships are necessary for long-term success. The individual may face delays or challenges in forming meaningful connections, but with persistence, they can achieve stability and long-lasting partnerships. Rahu, the individual may pursue unconventional or unexpected relationships, often attracted to foreign or socially diverse partners. There may be a tendency to break traditional relationship norms, which can bring both excitement and instability. Ketu, detached from the need for traditional social acceptance, the individual may seek relationships that fulfill a deeper philosophical or spiritual need. They may feel disconnected from superficial partnerships, focusing instead on connections with higher meaning. Gemini to Scorpio. Sun, leadership and recognition come through intellectual depth and solving complex problems. The individual may be drawn to research, investigation, or uncovering hidden truths, gaining respect for their keen mind and problem-solving abilities. They may struggle with power dynamics or intensity in leadership. Moon, emotional security is tied to uncovering deeper truths and solving mysteries. The individual finds comfort in understanding the hidden aspects of life, but may experience emotional turmoil due to overthinking or obsessing over complexities. Mars, energy and drive are focused on deep intellectual pursuits and solving puzzles. The individual is determined to uncover hidden meanings, but may become obsessive or confrontational in their approach to problem solving. Mercury, communication is intense and investigative. The individual excels in research and analysis, often using intellectual skills to solve puzzles or uncover secrets, but must guard against secrecy or manipulation in communication. Jupiter, growth and expansion are centered on deep intellectual exploration and transformation. The individual seeks to broaden their understanding of life through research or spiritual exploration, but must avoid becoming overly fixated on power or control. Venus, relationships are intense and transformative. The individual values deep emotional connections and experiences growth through partnerships, but must guard against jealousy or becoming too emotionally entangled in power struggles. Saturn, discipline and responsibility in intellectual pursuits are necessary for long-term success. The individual approaches research with patience and persistence, often facing challenges but achieving success through careful analysis. The individual may pursue unconventional or taboo intellectual topics, often delving into areas of life that others avoid. Their curiosity about the unknown can lead to groundbreaking discoveries, but may also bring instability or confusion. Ketu, detached from superficial knowledge, the individual seeks deeper understanding and spiritual truths. They are less interested in material concerns, focusing instead on uncovering hidden or mystical knowledge, but may struggle to connect with everyday intellectual tasks. Gemini to Sagittarius. Sun, leadership is expressed through teaching, advising, and intellectual pursuits. The individual is likely recognized for their ability to share knowledge and offer guidance, especially in educational or philosophical settings. They must avoid becoming overly dogmatic or rigid in their leadership style. Moon, emotional security comes from teaching and guiding others. The individual feels fulfilled when they can share their knowledge and support others, but may struggle with emotional rigidity or becoming overly attached to their beliefs. Mars. Energy is directed toward teaching, counseling, and guiding young minds. The individual is passionate about sharing knowledge, but must guard against becoming impatient or forceful in their teaching approach. Mercury. Communication is focused on education and offering intellectual guidance. The individual excels in teaching or advising, but must avoid being too preachy or rigid in their communication. Jupiter. Growth and expansion are achieved through teaching and intellectual pursuits. The individual seeks to broaden their knowledge through education and travel, but should guard against overconfidence or dogmatism in their beliefs. Venus. Relationships are centered on intellectual and educational connections. The individual values partnerships that promote growth and learning, but must avoid being too focused on intellectual compatibility at the expense of emotional connection. Saturn. Discipline and responsibility in intellectual pursuits and teaching are key to long-term success. The individual takes their role as a teacher seriously, but may face challenges or delays in gaining recognition, ultimately achieving success through perseverance. Rahu. The individual may pursue unconventional or foreign teaching methods, often breaking traditional norms in education. Their desire for intellectual freedom can lead to innovative ideas, but may also cause friction with more conservative viewpoints. Ketu. Detached from conventional teaching methods, the individual seeks to impart spiritual or philosophical wisdom. They may feel disinterested in everyday teaching roles, focusing instead on higher understanding and deeper philosophical insights. Manifestation. Gemini natal to Navamsha. Capricorn to Pisces. Sun to Capricorn. Leadership and recognition are expressed through disciplined communication and intellectual pursuits. The individual takes a structured approach to teaching or advising, particularly with children or younger individuals. They may feel burdened by their responsibilities, but are respected for their dedication to intellectual growth and mentoring. Moon. Emotional security is tied to fulfilling duties related to teaching or advising. The individual finds comfort in guiding others, particularly in a structured, educational setting. However, they may struggle with feeling overburdened or emotionally distant due to their responsibilities. Mars. Energy is directed toward disciplined communication, teaching, and advising. The individual is motivated to serve others by imparting knowledge, but they may become overly strict or controlling in their approach, especially when dealing with younger people. Mercury. Communication is disciplined and focused on teaching or offering advice. The individual excels in fields that require careful planning and methodical thinking, often taking on roles as a teacher or advisor. However, they may become too rigid or inflexible in their communication. Jupiter. Growth and expansion are focused on structured intellectual pursuits. The individual seeks wisdom through teaching, advising, or intellectual growth, often focusing on long-term goals. They must be cautious of becoming overly serious or rigid in their quest for knowledge. Venus. Relationships are grounded in intellectual and structured connections. The individual values partnerships that offer stability and growth through education or shared intellectual goals, but they must avoid becoming too focused on practical matters at the expense of emotional depth. Saturn. Discipline and responsibility in intellectual pursuits and teaching are key. The individual faces challenges or delays in achieving their goals, but achieves success through patience and hard work, often excelling in roles that require teaching or advising. The individual may take an unconventional approach to structured intellectual work or teaching. They may challenge traditional methods, seeking innovative ways to teach or communicate, though this can lead to instability or unpredictability in their professional life. Ketu. Detached from material concerns or conventional career paths, the individual may focus on spiritual or philosophical growth. They are less interested in traditional teaching roles and more focused on imparting wisdom with a higher purpose, often rejecting the rigidity of structured work. Sun. Leadership is expressed through innovative and unconventional communication. The individual is recognized for their originality and ability to think outside the box, often taking on leadership roles in intellectual or social reform. However, they may struggle with maintaining stability in their leadership roles due to their unconventional approach. Moon. Emotional security comes from intellectual freedom and social interactions. The individual feels fulfilled when they are part of innovative, forward-thinking social circles. However, they may struggle with emotional detachment or unpredictability in their relationships. Mars. Energy is directed toward intellectual innovation and unconventional communication. The individual is driven to break free from traditional ways of thinking and communicating, but may face conflicts or instability in their relationships due to their unpredictable approach. Mercury. Communication is innovative and forward-thinking. The individual excels in intellectual pursuits that involve breaking traditional norms or exploring new ideas, but they must avoid becoming too detached or overly abstract in their thinking. Jupiter. Growth and expansion are achieved through intellectual freedom and innovation. The individual seeks to broaden their horizons through unconventional education or social reform, often challenging societal norms, but they must guard against becoming too idealistic or unrealistic. Venus. Relationships are centered around intellectual freedom and unconventional connections. The individual values partners who encourage them to think freely and explore new ideas, but they may struggle with maintaining stability or emotional depth in their relationships. Saturn. Discipline and responsibility in intellectual pursuits are focused on social reform and innovation. The individual takes a serious approach to breaking traditional norms, often facing challenges in gaining acceptance for their ideas, but achieving success through perseverance. Rahu. The individual is drawn to unconventional intellectual pursuits and may seek innovative, cutting-edge ideas that challenge societal norms. However, this can lead to instability or confusion in their professional and personal life. Ketu. Detached from conventional ways of thinking, the individual seeks intellectual and spiritual freedom. They are less interested in traditional education and more focused on exploring deeper truths and new perspectives, often feeling disconnected from societal expectations. Gemini to Pisces. Sun. Leadership is expressed through creativity, spirituality, and compassionate communication. The individual is recognized for their ability to inspire others through imaginative and empathetic communication, but they must avoid becoming overly idealistic or losing focus on practical matters. Moon. Emotional security is tied to spiritual and imaginative pursuits. The individual feels emotionally fulfilled when they are engaged in creative or compassionate work, often finding solace in artistic expression or helping others. However, they may struggle with emotional boundaries or confusion in relationships. Mars. Energy is directed towards spiritual and creative communication. The individual is driven to explore new ideas and communicate in ways that inspire others, but they may become too scattered or unfocused in their pursuits, leading to frustration or burnout. Mercury. Communication is imaginative and intuitive. The individual excels in creative and spiritual communication, often using their words to inspire or heal others, but they must avoid becoming too vague or unclear in their expression. Jupiter. Growth and expansion are achieved through spiritual and creative communication. The individual seeks to broaden their horizons through compassionate work, travel, or creative expression, but they must guard against becoming overly idealistic or impractical in their pursuits. Venus. Relationships are centered around spiritual and creative connections. The individual values partners who share their spiritual or artistic values, often seeking deep emotional and intellectual connections, but they must avoid becoming too emotionally dependent or unrealistic in relationships. Saturn. Discipline and responsibility in creative and spiritual pursuits are necessary for long-term success. The individual may face challenges in maintaining focus or structure in their spiritual or creative work, but can achieve lasting success through perseverance and dedication. Rahu. The individual may pursue unconventional or mystical spiritual paths, often exploring new and imaginative ways of thinking and communicating. However, they may struggle with confusion or instability in their personal and professional life if they become too detached from reality. Ketu. Detached from material concerns and conventional communication, the individual seeks spiritual or mystical truths. They are less interested in practical matters and more focused on exploring deeper philosophical or spiritual ideas, often feeling disconnected from everyday concerns. Manifestation. Gemini natal to Navamsha, Aries to Gemini. Gemini to Aries. Sun. Leadership is expressed through dynamic and assertive communication. The individual takes the lead in conversations and intellectual endeavors, often initiating new ideas or projects involving siblings or neighbors. They must avoid being overly forceful or impulsive in their communication. Moon. Emotional security comes from being active and engaged in intellectual pursuits and relationships with siblings or close friends. The individual feels emotionally balanced when they are taking charge of their environment, but may struggle with impatience or emotional volatility. Mars. Energy and drive are focused on communication and intellectual competition. The individual is assertive and competitive, particularly in discussions or intellectual debates. They may take on leadership roles in their community or among siblings, but they should be cautious of becoming overly aggressive or confrontational. Mercury. Communication is sharp, direct, and often innovative. The individual excels in intellectual pursuits that require quick thinking and decisiveness, but must be mindful not to rush into decisions or communicate without fully considering the consequences. Jupiter. Growth and expansion are achieved through dynamic intellectual pursuits. The individual is optimistic and adventurous in their communication, often seeking opportunities to teach, travel, or engage in philosophical discussions with siblings or close friends. They should guard against overconfidence or impulsivity in their intellectual pursuits. Venus. Relationships are centered around energetic and stimulating communication. The individual values partners who can match their intellectual enthusiasm and may form close bonds with siblings or neighbors. However, they must avoid being too impatient or overly focused on intellectual compatibility in relationships. Saturn. Discipline and responsibility in communication are necessary for long-term success. The individual may face challenges or delays in learning to communicate effectively, but with patience and persistence, they will develop a structured and responsible approach to intellectual pursuits. Rahu. The individual may pursue unconventional methods of communication or intellectual expression. They may be drawn to new and innovative ways of thinking, but could face confusion or instability if they become too erratic or impulsive in their approach. Ketu. Detached from traditional communication methods, the individual may seek deeper intellectual or philosophical connections. They are less interested in superficial conversations and may focus on exploring profound and abstract ideas, often feeling disconnected from everyday concerns. Gemini to Taurus. Sun. Leadership and recognition are centered around practical communication and resource management. The individual is likely to use their communication skills to secure financial or material resources, often taking charge in business or financial discussions. However, they must avoid becoming overly focused on material gain at the expense of intellectual growth. Moon. Emotional security is linked to communication and the management of resources. The individual feels emotionally stable when they can use their intellect to secure material wealth or stability, but may struggle with emotional attachment to possessions or financial security. Mars. Energy and drive are channeled into communication and the pursuit of material resources. The individual is assertive in business dealings or financial negotiations, often using their intellectual skills to secure wealth. However, they must guard against becoming too aggressive or possessive in their pursuit of financial success. Mercury. Communication is focused on practical matters and resource management. The individual excels in intellectual pursuits that involve financial planning or business communication, but must avoid becoming too materialistic or narrowly focused on resource acquisition. Jupiter. Growth and expansion are achieved through intellectual pursuits related to financial security or material gain. The individual is optimistic about their ability to use their communication skills to secure wealth, but should avoid overindulgence or greed in their pursuit of material success. Venus. Relationships are centered around practical communication and shared resources. The individual values partners who can provide financial stability or material comfort, but they must avoid becoming too focused on wealth or material gain in their relationships. Saturn. Discipline and responsibility in communication are focused on securing material resources. The individual takes a methodical approach to intellectual pursuits related to finance or business, often facing challenges or delays but achieving long-term success through patience and persistence. Rahu. The individual may pursue unconventional methods of acquiring wealth or securing resources. They are likely to explore new and innovative ways of communication in financial matters, but this may lead to instability or confusion if they become too erratic in their approach. Ketu. Detached from material concerns, the individual may focus more on intellectual or spiritual growth than on securing financial resources. They are less interested in material wealth and more focused on deeper intellectual or philosophical pursuits, often feeling disconnected from everyday financial concerns. Gemini to Gemini. Sun. Leadership is expressed through communication and intellectual pursuits. The individual takes charge in intellectual discussions, often excelling in roles that require sharp thinking and quick decision-making. However, they may struggle with restlessness or scattering their energy across too many projects. Moon. Emotional security is tied to intellectual stimulation and communication. The individual feels emotionally fulfilled when engaged in stimulating conversations or intellectual debates, but may struggle with emotional consistency or superficiality in relationships. Energy and drive are focused on intellectual pursuits and communication. The individual is highly motivated to succeed through their mental abilities, often taking on multiple projects or ideas at once. However, they may become too scattered or impatient in their intellectual endeavors. Mercury. Communication is fast-paced, sharp, and central to the individual's success. They excel in intellectual pursuits that require quick thinking and adaptability, but they must guard against becoming overly scattered or unfocused in their communication. Jupiter. Growth and expansion are achieved through intellectual exploration and communication. The individual seeks to broaden their knowledge and influence through teaching, writing, or travel, but must avoid overconfidence or spreading themselves too thin in their intellectual pursuits. Venus. Relationships are centered around intellectual stimulation and communication. The individual values partners who can engage them intellectually and may form relationships based on shared intellectual interests. However, they must avoid becoming too superficial in their relationships, focusing more on mental compatibility than emotional depth. Saturn. Discipline and responsibility in communication are necessary for long-term success. The individual may face challenges in focusing their intellectual energy or communicating effectively, but with persistence, they can develop a structured and disciplined approach to intellectual pursuits. Rahu. The individual may pursue unconventional or innovative communication methods. They are likely drawn to cutting-edge ideas and intellectual pursuits that challenge traditional norms, but must guard against becoming too erratic or unfocused in their approach. Ketu. Detached from everyday intellectual concerns, the individual seeks deeper philosophical or spiritual knowledge. They are less interested in superficial conversations and more focused on exploring abstract ideas and higher learning, often feeling disconnected from mundane intellectual tasks.